It is middays, and we welcome Alyssa Arbuckle, Multimedia Journalist with SuperTalk Mississippi News. Of course, that sound means it's time to talk about the news. There's Alyssa. Alyssa, how you doing today?
Good. That was good timing, Rhino.
Yeah.
That was wonderful. That was the best one that I've heard so far.
One thing we just established is that it helps when I'm talking to have the mic in front of my mouth, not 4 feet away. So, all right. So it's been a rather eventful week, it seems like. Why don't we get started by talking about this court ruling that allows religious exemptions for school vaccinations?
Yeah, okay. So that was ruled. We had an article go out on Friday. Now, this started on Monday where people who have religious exemptions, they can say, hey, I don't want my kids to be able to have these certain vaccinations that were required to be enrolled in Mississippi school districts. But the ruling was in April that a federal judge said that you can't do that. You got to let the parents choose, the legal guardians choose. And so it was enforced by the Mississippi State Department of Health. And they had that previous vaccination rule for, I think, 40 years. I'm pretty sure it was. But it didn't allow certain things like, you had to get the polio vaccine. You had to get hepatitis, measles, mumps, all of those things, that were really big factors, within the past, couple decades and stuff. So now people can say, I don't want to have my child have that vaccination. COVID-19 vaccinations, that's not been required so far. So that's not
Doesn't apply to that. Yeah.
No, it does not.
So we had Dr. Edney, of course, on the Gallo Show earlier in the week. And on this program, we had Dr. Jennifer Bryan, and they both discussed this issue. It was ordered to the Department of Health, I should say, by the judge to implement this program. They have done so. You can go to the Department of Health website if you wish to apply for religious exemption from these vaccinations. There is a process to do so. Must be approved by the state epidemiologist. And I think you also have to view a video, if I'm not mistaken. I've seen some people on social media object to watching the video. Which is kind of interesting. Okay, so that's a big thing that happened. What about the Tidelands squabble that's going on down there on the coast?
That was something that I thought was really interesting. I'm not from the coast, so I didn't know very much about the Tidelands, but I started reading into it, and it was this week that Biloxi's mayor, Andrew Fofo Gillich, he released a letter of support to Attorney General Lynn Fitch, as well as General Joe Spraggins, who's over the Department of Marine Resources, the DMR. The DMR is the one who's supposed to enforce these leases for the Tidelands, down on the coast and everything. Well, not enforce necessarily, but make sure that those leases are made. And Secretary of State Michael Watson has said, Attorney General Lynn Fitch, I really want these to be enforced. I want to make sure that these people are paying their Tideland leases. Right. And I want the DMR to make sure that that's happening, and that they have this permit first and then they can start leasing it. And Attorney General Lynn Fitch has said, no, we're just going to, let things be as they are. And Secretary of State Michael Watson, you can hire an outside private firm to make sure that that's enforced, like we've been doing for, years and years, to make sure that that's enforced. So he hired one that is going to cost $75,000. That's been about how much it is in previous years, like whenever Hoseman was doing it. And years ago, he also hired a private firm to be able to deal with it as well. So.
I remember that. And it's kind of interesting how this is all surfacing as we approach the election, right? Because a lot of this happened as Lieutenant Governor was Secretary of State during that period. And so we got a couple of state offices that are contending a bit on this matter.
Yes, definitely. Lynn Fitch hasn't given out very much, information and hasn't really released any statements about it. That's something that Watson's also said, that he, wants more communication about it, and that he's been notifying her about it for over a year now. and that he's just worried because at this time, like over 25 entities on the coast alone, they're using the tidelands without having a proper lease, and there are over a dozen, I think, that are also they're subleasing it from state agencies, and they're not paying that lease, even though they're still using the land.
Yep.
So he wants to make sure that everybody pays those, and that the tidelands are preserved and not misused, and that the public still has access to the ocean and the land surrounding it. So right now, I'm pretty sure there's 150 current proper tideland leases in Mississippi, and that generates $10 to $12 million to local agencies on the coast.
So something that's certainly been in focus the last several months in the state of Mississippi is the healthcare industry, and there's been some activity, some news there. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so Merritt Health River Region, that's in Vicksburg, they announced, I believe it was June 30th, that they were going to be closing their behavioral health unit on June 30th, right? So they're going to transfer 50 beds over to Merritt Health Central, Mississippi, which is in Jackson. So that's probably about like 35 minutes away.
Yeah.
So they're going to transfer all of those over there. It's kind of just hit the news, as a couple of different places have closed their behavioral health units. Other hospitals have experienced closures of inpatient services, behavioral health units, and some have been, a lot of hospitals have been laying off hundreds and hundreds of employees, and getting them to relocate. But Merritt Health Central has been having a 10-month-long endeavor to consolidate several of their mental health services, such as adult, adolescent, and chemical dependency units. So it's nothing new that just came out of nowhere.
I don't think we've seen the last of more news coming out of the healthcare sector in the state of Mississippi. All right, we got political races are heating up, shall we say. The lieutenant governor's race on the Republican side has been certainly in focus. And we've got elections coming up. What's happening here is Senator McDaniel and Lieutenant Governor Hosemann seem to be playing the game of gotcha, it seems like, huh?
Definitely. We released an article this week by our news director, J.T. Mitchell. He put it together. I highly encourage any listener to go out and read it for themselves. It's very detailed, very thorough, and it gives a lot more insight than we're probably about to give. So a lot of stuff has happened this week alone, just between incumbent Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann and candidate Senator Chris McDaniel. They've released some ads, and it's very much like, oh, this is what I want to do, and this is what I've seen. One of the things that McDaniel is accusing Hosemann of is being a pro-abortion, because Hosemann used to work at South Jackson, Mississippi, or South Jackson Women's Clinic, which is now closed. But he released some documents that Hosemann worked there until 1989, and then decade later, the clinic's president came out and said that Hosemann only provided services at that clinic from 1977 to 1981, which was before any abortions were made there.
Legal services, yes. And he was listed on official filings with the Secretary of State as an officer in the company, which you have to do. So, yeah, I think the question is timing more than anything. And the Secretary of State, I suspect, is probably going to be thrust into this matter as well, because it's documents that they have on file. Yeah. So we got that, and then we got a couple of senators that are coming to the defense of Delbert Hosemann and being critical of their colleague, Senator Chris McDaniel. That would be Senator Jeremy England.
Yes.
And Daniel Sparks. What do you know about that?
So with Senator Jeremy England, a photo surfaced of him shortly after he was in a local TV ad stating his support of Hosemann. A video surfaced of him wearing a pink jumpsuit and a tulle skirt. And some people were asking, what is that about? Why is he wearing pink? Who is he supporting? And had some backlash. And he came out and explained that it was in 2020 when he was raising money for breast cancer survivors. And He raised a lot of money from it in 2020 and is now using the photo now that it's being used after he stated his support of Hoseman. He's raised over $1,600 just from Thursday morning, I think Wednesday to Thursday morning, for all men wear pink. Or
he posted on his social media, and apparently I think he explains that it was used as a threat. Somebody was going to expose that photo without context.
Yes.
Oh, gosh. Okay. Well, we appreciate it as always, Alyssa, for coming in. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me.
We're coming right back in the Element Well studio.